There comes a moment in every human life when excuses lose their power. A moment when you realize that where you are is not the result of luck, the economy, or the opinions of others, but the result of choices you've been making day after day. And that moment, whether you recognize it or not, is the day everything can begin to change. You see, life doesn't change when the weather changes. It doesn't change when the government changes. It doesn't even change when the people around you change. Life changes the day you decide to change. The day you finally say, enough. Enough drifting. Enough settling. Enough waiting for someday to arrive. Because someday is not a day on the calendar. It's a decision you've been postponing. Most people hope for a better life. But hope without action is just wishful thinking. The difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one is not talent, intelligence, or background. It's the willingness to take responsibility and draw a new line in the sand. The moment you accept that your future is in your hands is the moment your power returns. This is not about dramatic overnight transformation. It's about a quiet, firm decision made within yourself. A decision to think better, act better, and demand more from who you are becoming. When you change the way you think, you change what you do. And when you change what you do consistently, life has no choice but to respond. Today could be just another day. Or it could be the day you decide to change everything. Change always begins with a decision, not with circumstances. Most people spend their lives waiting for the outside world to improve before they give themselves permission to grow. They wait for more time, more money, more confidence, or better conditions, believing that change will arrive once everything is perfectly aligned. But life does not reward waiting. It responds to decisions. The truth is that circumstances rarely change first. They change because someone decides they will no longer live the same way. A decision is powerful because it shifts control from the environment back to the individual. The moment you decide, you stop being a victim of what happens to you and start becoming the author of what happens next. You may not immediately see results, but something important has already changed on the inside. Your thinking becomes clearer, your standards rise, and your actions begin to move in a new direction. That internal shift is what eventually reshapes your external world. History is full of people who changed their lives without perfect conditions. They started in uncertainty, confusion, and fear, but they had one thing that mattered more than confidence or resources resolve. Once a decision is made, the mind begins to search for solutions instead of excuses. Opportunities that were once invisible suddenly appear because attention has shifted. Circumstances will always try to negotiate with you. They will whisper that now is not the right time, that tomorrow would be safer, that change is risky. But the day you decide is the day you stop asking for permission from life. That decision becomes a turning point, a quiet but unshakable commitment to a better direction. And from that moment forward, life begins to respond differently. Personal responsibility is the foundation of all lasting change. The moment a person accepts full responsibility for their life, excuses begin to lose their grip. Blame may feel comforting for a while, but it quietly steals power. As long as success or failure is placed in someone else's hands, progress remains out of reach. Responsibility, on the other hand, returns control to where it belongs. It is not about guilt or self-criticism. It is about ownership. When you take responsibility, you stop asking who is at fault and start asking what can be done. This shift in thinking is small but transformational. It moves the focus from past disappointments to future possibilities. You begin to understand that while you cannot control everything that happens, you can always control how you respond, how you prepare, and how you improve. That understanding alone separates those who grow from those who remain stuck. Many people misunderstand responsibility and see it as a burden. In reality, it is freedom. The person who accepts responsibility is no longer dependent on luck, timing, or approval. They become proactive rather than reactive. Each choice, each habit, and each discipline becomes a vote for the kind of life they want to live. Even mistakes take on new value because they become lessons instead of setbacks. Growth accelerates when responsibility becomes a daily practice. Small, consistent choices made with awareness begin to compound. Standards rise, discipline strengthens, and self-respect grows. Life starts responding differently, not because circumstances magically improve, but because the individual has improved. The moment responsibility is fully accepted, progress becomes inevitable. Small shifts in thinking are often underestimated, yet they are the quiet force behind every major life transformation. Most people believe that change requires a dramatic breakthrough, but real progress usually begins with a simple adjustment in perspective. The way you interpret your experiences determines how you act, and how you act determines the direction your life takes. When thinking improves, even slightly, behavior follows. And over time, those small improvements compound into remarkable results. Every action is first a thought. If thinking is careless, limited, or negative, actions will reflect that mindset. But when a person begins to think with intention, asking better questions and expecting more from themselves, their choices start to change. A small shift, such as choosing responsibility over blame or discipline over comfort, may seem insignificant in the moment, but repeated daily, it creates a powerful new pattern. Thinking shapes what you notice and what you ignore. When the mind is trained to look for opportunity instead of obstacles, the world appears different. Possibilities that were once overlooked become visible, and challenges are approached with creativity rather than fear. This is not optimism for the sake of positivity. It is clarity. It is understanding that mindset acts as a filter through which life is experienced. Massive life changes are rarely the result of one bold move. They are the result of small, intelligent decisions made consistently over time. A better thought leads to a better choice. A better choice leads to a better habit, and habits eventually shape character. Character, in turn, determines destiny. The smallest improvement in thinking today can redirect the course of tomorrow. And with enough time and consistency, those tiny shifts become the foundation of an entirely new life direction. Many people spend their lives waiting to feel motivated before they take action. not realizing that motivation is often the result of movement, not the cause of it. Feelings are unreliable guides because they change with mood, energy, and circumstance. If progress depended on feeling ready, very little would ever be accomplished. Commitment, on the other hand, does not wait for inspiration. It acts first and allows momentum to follow. The moment a person commits, something powerful happens internally. The mind stops debating and starts aligning. Instead of asking whether to act, it begins figuring out how. This shift removes hesitation and replaces it with clarity. Even small actions taken under commitment create progress, and progress naturally generates motivation. Once you see evidence that movement is producing results, energy increases and confidence grows. Waiting for motivation often leads to delay, and delay quietly becomes a habit. Days pass, then weeks, and eventually opportunities fade. Commitment interrupts this cycle. It establishes a standard that says action will be taken regardless of mood. This discipline builds self-trust, and self-trust fuels momentum. Each follow-through strengthens belief in one's ability to keep promises to themselves. Momentum is not dramatic at first. It starts quietly, almost unnoticed, through consistent effort. One action leads to another, and soon, what once felt difficult begins to feel natural. Motivation then becomes a byproduct of progress, rather than a prerequisite for it. The person who commits learns that success is not about feeling inspired every day, but about showing up consistently, letting action pull motivation along instead of waiting for motivation to push action forward. Today's choices are shaping tomorrow's results. Whether those choices feel important or insignificant in the moment. Life is not built in sudden leaps, but in daily decisions repeated over time. What you choose to think about, what you tolerate, and how you use your time quietly form the direction your future will take. Many people look at their results and wonder how they arrived there, forgetting that every outcome has a history of small decisions behind it. Each day presents simple opportunities to choose growth or comfort, discipline or convenience. These choices rarely feel dramatic, which is why they are so easy to ignore. Yet consistency gives them power. A single good choice may not change much, but repeated daily it begins to compound. In the same way, small neglects practiced over time create limitations that seem to appear suddenly, but were actually forming quietly. The future is not something you stumble into. It is something you prepare for. What you do today is a rehearsal for what you will do tomorrow. Standards you maintain now become habits later, and habits eventually become a lifestyle. This is why awareness is critical. When you recognize that every choice is a vote for the person you are becoming, daily decisions take on new meaning. Success rarely announces itself in advance. It arrives gradually, built on invisible effort and patient discipline. The same is true for failure. Both are predictable, and both are earned over time. When you understand this, urgency replaces procrastination, and intention replaces drift. The smallest choice made with purpose today can quietly redirect your future toward results you once believed were out of reach.